Hello, and welcome to the Designing Impactful Innovation podcast. I'm your host, Clara, and today we're delving into how manufacturing startups can overcome the challenges of complexity in product development. Let's listen to Kevin O'Donovan, technology evangelist, Arvind Krishnan, industry analyst at Lifecycle Insights, and Peter Terwilliger, worldwide online industry process consultant director at Dassault Systèmes.
Good day, everybody, and welcome to this podcast. Today, I have with me Kevin and Peter. So let's start with the first question, and that's to you, Kevin. Data is very vital. So how must manufacturing startups think about data?
Well, it was Peter in his was talking about, data. And to be quite honest, all of this does come down to the data. We used to chat before that we don't have enough data, and now we have loads of data, and we spoke about you have to simulate more, and you can make iterations and do it all in a digital format rather than doing it in the real world. But I suppose the biggest thing that I see a lot with companies when I'm working with them is that they say, "Oh, we've got all this data," and you go, "Great, how good is your data?" Because if you don't trust your own data, you can put it into whatever models, tools, AI you want, and you mightn't like the result. So the whole data is key. It is the primary building block for all of this, right? And we're getting more and more data from different entire life cycles, all coming into one version of the truth. But the ultimate thing is that I need to trust the data coming in as well, and watch for anything that goes weird, because again, that helps me simulate, iterate, pass the red face test. So data is key.
Thank you, Kevin. Peter, so how does 3D Experience approach data?
Well, there's some amazing things out there that we've all seen in our various experiences. And Kevin reminded me as he was giving this answer that back in the day when I was in practice in AEC, we shared drawings all the time, right? But now in today's world of data, it's not good enough to share those drawings, and we find that maybe a parapet winds up looking great and planned, but it's out on 2 feet out in space because it was just needed to look good in a drawing, right? So, Kevin's point about making sure that your data is good is an incredibly good one. But there's another thing to think about here, right? Is your data is your company. It is your IP, right? And you need to be able to know where that data came from. You need to be able to document the decisions that come into it that affect that data and generate that data. And God forbid, something happens to one of your key people, or he gets a better job offer, or decides risk is not something he wants to do. And so he winds up disappearing. Now you've got to put a new person in place, and she's got to come up to speed. And she needs that context that the 3D Experience platform, through documenting the requirements, through documenting the conversations, to putting everybody on the same page, that context is all there. And then there's one last thing that when you mention data that everybody thinks about, right? Who's going to steal my data? Oh my gosh, the data's on the cloud. Who's going to steal that, right? We have to bring this answer in a relatively short period of time. There's a trust center. It has all the answers to your questions about security. It has all the answers about the certifications that we have in both in our data centers and our software to make sure that your data is secure, locked up tight, and accessible to only who you want it to be accessible to.
Excellent, Peter. Now, this question, Kevin, is for you. We all know that today's products are not just pure mechanical products. There's a whole lot of electronics in them. There's a bunch of software in them. Think about a car like Tesla. I mean, would you call it a moving computer or just a mechanical car with 4 wheels and some kind of a drive? No, the reality is today's products have to have electronics and software. So how must startups approach this? And, how should they approach the integration of software, electronics, other non-mechanical stuff into their products?
In the theory ideal world, you have to address all of it, because, okay, an autonomous vehicle is a pretty complex beast. To bring it back a small bit in terms of, but I don't care what you're developing today, if it's some sort of there's going to be some electronics in it, PCB design, maybe you buy all that stuff off the shelf and just plug it together, and you connect up a couple of motors and you get a robot to move that you sell to someone who in a garage or a factory or whatever. In the ideal world, when I say I want to simulate that product, I want to simulate all that product working in a 3D world. And whether that is like if you think of the robot, it's got electricity coming into it, it's got motors, it's got control circuitry, it's got software. It may have remote control software that I'm doing stuff from somewhere else, and it has to physically move. So the whole mechanics, the physics models and whatever, it can't do something that the laws of physics don't allow, right? Otherwise I'm back to, I just made some thing for the metaverse and can't work in the real world. So in the ideal world, yes. Now the feature is that you can get software today that does every piece of that, but they're all different. And this is back to Peter's point in terms of you need to start bringing them all back to one version of the truth, because you might have it working in every silo, but when you join them all together, you figure out, okay, you meant something different when you said that word. I heard the word, but I thought it was something else. And it's that transparency and breaking down the data silos. So can you do it? Yes. Is it instant? No. But that's what you got to start thinking about. It can't be in siloed anymore, regardless of where the teams are based, right? Because your customer is going to say, look, I want to say, and can we change this bit and change that bit? And what happens if you do change the PCB layout? Does that have any implications on anything else? That's where simulation comes in, rather than ordering it, getting it in, putting it in, go, oh God, it's a half a centimeter too big. Who knew, right? That's where the simulation comes in.
And Arvind, I know you didn't ask me that question. I'll go ahead and provide a little bit of an answer as well in there. We spent the time today talking about the basics, right? We talked about modeling, we talked about simulation, but there are over 250 applications on the 3D Experience platform. This is, again, enterprise level software. If you need to do something, the power of the cloud enables you to use that software and then put it back on the shelf and, give it back to Dassault, basically, right? You're not buying an application for something you only need once in a while, right? You're going to use it on the cloud, then you're going to not use it, go back to the basics and make sure that you get where you need to be. I'm sure that we have it. If we don't have it, we have the ability to bring your data onto the cloud through our collaborative solutions. So lots of things to explore with the 3D Experience platform. It's not only internal to Dassault, it's all your data. And it's SAP, it's everywhere, right? So that's the kinds of things that we like to think about when we talk to startups.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you, Peter, for that. I think, Peter, this one is exactly for you. You mentioned enterprise level software, and our audience today are wondering, enterprise level software means Boeing, the Airbus, the Raytheons, right? I mean, that's what comes to the mind, the Fords, the General Motors. Now, as startups, they might be intimidated by enterprise level software. And that's exactly what our question is being posed. How easy is it to onboard your enterprise level software, and can startups do that?
That's a great point, Arvind, and absolutely something that I experienced coming from a more traditional CAD background, right? Oh my gosh, the learning curve is going to be so great. It's going to take me forever to learn this, blah, on and on and on. I want to recall our conversation that we had a little while ago about the levels of complexity, right? The way the platform is put together enables you to participate to your needs. Again, the person who's doing 3D modeling needs that complexity of that very capable application, whereas somebody who just wants to sketch on the screen, get their issue into the system and get it taken care of, that person doesn't need to know those tools. That's the first thing. The second point is yeah, when I came to Dassault Systems, I didn't know how to use CATIA. I'll go ahead and say something trite like, this is not your father's CATIA, right? Tons of UI specialists and UX specialists have been working on it to make it much more digestible, discoverable, and learnable. But what the cloud comes with is a personal online support and training, right? It's online training to master those skills that you need. It's 24/7 through our communities, through a direct community with Dassault Systèmes. It's a 24/7 support. And ultimately, we have the ability to support you through what you need to do. So yeah, you are picking up maybe some software that's not exactly familiar to you. But you are also in the final analysis picking up the software that you need to play with others, right? If you're going to enter into the transportation marketplace and all the big people around you and your suppliers, both up and downstream, they're all using this software, right? That's the thing. You need to be able to participate with them and share software with them. We got your back when it comes to learning it.
And if I can just add on to that, Peter, you also mentioned in terms of you have different consumers, and
Yes.
and in the world I grew up in, it's like people would say, but I need all of, like if you think simulating a physics model for this is easy, you're dreaming. We need hardcore engineering quality grade software, and you do, and you have it. But it's the other people who go, I just want to see what it looks like. And I don't need to know how it all works. And yet the interface, if you call it like that, is I can go in as a particular user and I don't have to reconfigure the entire bloody thing. I can just see it. Or I'm, as you say, I'm coming from the finance department. I just want to see whatever, one version of the truth. So that ability, again, we've never had that capability before, because you can kind of have different user roles or different ways of exposing that data to people, all through the same one version of the truth. And I'll speak for my own age group, whatever we came, you have to learn all this stuff. Look at our kids and teenagers. They're off playing Roblox and Fortnite and whatever. If they want to create their own games, they're off in graphical tools, creating all this stuff, getting spatial awareness, 3D models, physics, how it all works. So the next time you go hire your next engineer coming out of college, they'll probably have some of this core skills already, right? So we're the ones that have to catch up.
Indeed, they do, and that's exactly what we do. But what we see a lot, you reminded me of something here. Not so much the finance people, but the people on the manufacturing floor, right? The people on the manufacturing floor, they came up through manufacturing. They don't know how to use these CAD applications, yet they have some very valuable knowledge and lessons to impart, right? So the tools need to be easy to use for those folks to participate in the conversation, while the person who does need that complexity is able to get what she or he needs to do at the same time.
Very bad.
Yep. Oh, I was thinking we would go without talking sustainability, but I guess that's not going to happen. I think we'll start with you, Kevin. How important is sustainability for manufacturing startups? How should they be approaching the topic of sustainability?
To me, it's on the same level as the financial viability in terms of where am I getting my funding? How do I make money? How do I keep the lights on? Now, sustainability means many things to different people. To me, sustainability is a key part of how resilient you are. And when I say resilient, is that, well, can you deal with things that will change? But let's just say sustainability. It is becoming a must-have, game stakes, to say you need to know your scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions. Now, there's lots of different methodologies out there, and we argue about this, that, and the other. But you have to understand, what your own footprint is. And when you build a product and you go to give it to someone, they go, well, what's the embedded carbon, or what's your scope 1 or 2 or whatever of that product? So you need to know that. So you need to start plugging back into the supply chain. And that's not easy, right? You need enterprise quality tools to be able to do all that. If anything changes, we've seen, God forbid, with the tragic consequences of the Ukraine war, a lot of people's steel is now coming from somewhere else. So suddenly I need to plug that into my model to go, well, what's the sustainability costs for that? What are the costs on reliability, whatever? And the other thing with the simulation thing, and I see lots of examples of this, is that, can I design things in a different way to make them more recyclable? Because if I can make them more recyclable, you start getting into here in Europe, we talk about the circular economy, and you see it in the US, and and I can simulate all that rather than going off and making prototype after prototype after prototype and then figure out it's the wrong one. So again, I can share here's my design, potentially with a complete third party that's a recycler, and they'll say, well, we that's going to be hard to recycle because our robot does this. Can you move, whatever. And that's how we start joining the dots. To me, that's sustainability. But if you're not thinking about it, then you're gonna have a tough time.
Peter, your thoughts?
I totally agree with that. Totally agree. And in an illustration on how sustainability means different things to different people, what I thought of immediately when you asked your question was a podcast I was listening to the other day. there was a company, they were changing the way that we fly in the world, right? That's their stated intention that they want to do. And they're building an amazing plane, and they're going to tell you all about it. It's a podcast out there. But what they also talked about was they wanted to be sustainable. They had to design it in from day one, right? So they found out that there's a specific type of jet fuel that can be made from the components of the atmosphere, right? The carbon that's in the atmosphere already, this, that, and the other thing. But none of the jet engines run on this jet fuel today. They were able to use the power of their tools to be able to develop a jet engine to go into that plane, so that that sustainable fuel was designed into their plans from day one. And their reception as what we're talking about from the investment community is, it's just one more thing for those folks to trust in them. We've got that technology on the 3D Experience platform. Check it out. Look at what we're able to do. Look at how we built sustainability in from day one in our design. It's designed in.
Yeah, so I guess the main point here is you need to keep sustainability not at the back of your mind and make it as the last thing that you want to put a check mark around, but right from the start, right from concept, everywhere you go, we need to be thinking about sustainability. And Kevin talked about the circular economy, and Peter gave an excellent example of a living startup right there who's embracing sustainability at every aspect of their product development. So those tools are out there. And I think if you, as a startup, if you fail to recognize the importance of sustainability, it will be too late by the time you start to get there, due to either pressure from the investors or due to pressure from your competitors. It's really too late to be thinking about sustainability if you have not thought about it right from day one. I think that's the message that both Peter and Kevin wants to give.
Well, if I may, just can you imagine years ago, you design a product on paper, you'd build it, you'd figure out now they need to change that, you'd whatever. Just think of the amount of raw materials we used up in making all the prototypes that were out the back, right? You now do all this stuff on a computer, and fine, there's an environmental impact of the computers and the data center and the blah, but then you have renewable energy and REX and so that can, and again, you can answer that, you can pass the red face test and say, look, this is how we're thinking that. But the ability to be able to simulate all this stuff and plan it out and then just make it once and make it right once, like the sustainability impact of that alone compared to what we used to do 10, 20 years ago is, don't underestimate that either, right?
Gosh, I have visions of those Federal Express tubes that we used to ship drawings to each other, for review all the time, waiting for the 4 o'clock Federal Express guy. Oh my gosh. So yeah,
time to market.
Yep.
No, it's excellent, Peter. You mentioned that, there were times when we used to wait for products to come from, say, Far East, and that would take 3 days by express shipping, and it cost way more to ship than to make. Now we're talking about cost, we're talking about footprint, we're talking about, the time to market is just extended by 3 days. With 3D printing, suddenly those things changed. You could just print them right at your door. So, we're really talking about technologies out there that enable sustainable practices. So the idea is the startups have to embrace them right from day one and have to be thinking about not just designing their product, but how are they going to make it? How are they going to package it? Kevin, you made an excellent point. It's just not materials, but we are really talking about packaging. Design for sustainable packaging is really a big theme in a lot of industries. And finally, how are you going to dispose it? Is there a way to recycle your things? Can you reuse them? That's becoming a big movement across Europe. Can I reuse existing products and repackage them to become completely new products? And we see some excellent startups just using existing products and building some new things out of it. So, I think we can have an entire webinar on sustainability, but, last comments, anyone, before we close?
I think we have 3 passionate people that are willing to go on and talk about this stuff all day long if you let us. That's what it is just fascinating stuff to have this conversation.
I agree. We think things are going quickly now and it's hard to keep up with what everyone's doing and the art of the possible. Buckle up. We're just getting started.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Peter and Kevin. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Arvind.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Designing Impactful Innovation. To find out more, go to 3ds.com/cloud. Don't forget to subscribe for more insights and stories from our guest experts.